Well, welcome back to the task force meeting, right? Thank you very much. We'll do a quick, well, first of all, let's call the meeting to order. And we'll do a roll call, but I want to say a special welcome to Bob and Corey that are joining us and representing the fire department. So welcome, glad to have you here. So roll call.
Corey Thorson, Wilmer Fire Department.
Kurt Hine, Public Works.
Steve Oken, City Finance.
Ike Collins, City Administrator.
Sean Meskew, City Council.
Mark Galvin.
Julie Osmond, City Council.
Fernando Alvarado, City Council. Robert Stone, Sigma Fire.
Megan Pikeman.
And Kathy Schwanta, City Council. So we have a jam-packed day. Sarah, we just did roll call if you want to introduce yourself as well.
It's Sarah Swedberg.
Okay, great. We're gonna, I'm hoping that we can fit all this in today. We've got a lot of work to do. So hopefully we can make it work. I'd like to draw your attention to the blue sticky wall. We don't have time in the meeting to be able to go through it, but we were asked to finish filling it out so that we could say that it was complete, right? And it does help to justify our reason and our selection of the fire station. The green is for, it meets the priority, the red it does not meet the priority, and the yellow is somewhere in between. So I'm asking those task force members that have participated in this to take a look at the blue sticky wall at some point and let me know if it is not, if you have any changes or any suggestions, because I took a few liberties and I just want to make sure that when we present this to the public that it is and to the council that it meets the expectations of the whole task force.
I was just telling Sean, I got a post yesterday that Block 25 is now for sale
Okay.
for $100,000. So that's a number that we didn't have before. It just popped up on my feed yesterday.
Okay,
Before we didn't have a price.
but that's still for half of it rather than
Correct.
the full lot, and the other owner is still not interested
Still not
in
interested
selling?
in selling according to what Mr. Holland told us.
Okay, all right. Good information to have. Thank you. Thank you very much. So again, I'll swap that out, the one, red one. The other ones will still remain up there as the additional property, second property not for sale, okay? Okay. So what we're gonna do is walk through the SWOT analysis, and the SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and technically threats, but I'm gonna list it as challenges because it might be easier for us to think of things as challenges. Technically, when you do a SWOT analysis, the strengths and weaknesses are internal, and the opportunities and threats have to do with external items. But in some cases, I think that word challenge might just fit better than threat. So we had met with the firefighters on last Thursday night and had a very honest conversation, don't you think, guys? Very honest and frank. And so we want to share the feedback that they gave us, and also just to show you what our intent is for completing the SWOT analysis, okay? You all have the stickies in front of you and the black magic markers, and we're going to have a brainstorming session in just a few minutes, but we'll just use the example of the conversation with the firefighters so you all get the message of what they conveyed to us, and we'll get it implemented, okay? So,
Okay.
Julie?
Okay, one of the first ones they talked about or had concerns about was the training room. And one of those was, there was discussion that this might be used for a conference room or training room for city office people or possibly with the city council chambers. And their issue was with noise, if there was a fire and how that would impact this space. And if it was other training going on here, if there was a fire. So
What do
we
you
think
think
that
that weakness?
as a weakness. Okay, the wash bay, there was discussion about that's the wash bay behind us and having access to get out. We're gonna say access is a challenge for the grass ring. They brought up an interesting point that we hadn't considered was the partial purchase of Schwegmans. Let's say if we just purchased the wing, the east wing of Schwegmans, those two rental offices. We saw that as an opportunity. Shared space, whether we use some of this space, fire department could use space in the new city hall. One was a challenge and the other was an opportunity. Security, as a challenge, with their city council meetings or people going into city offices, access to the fire department and their equipment over here. Parking, that's in all caps.
For good reason.
That was a huge discussion. So part of that was a weakness, the coming in and how they were going to park, and part of it is a challenge for how we could address that and just change how they park coming in. Signage, they were concerned about confusion with the public, like if there was a fire department, that's going on later, just to make sure when people come in, which way do they go to the fire department, which way to come for the city hall.
And because the city hall would be out front, the fire department would not have a First Street viewing, and so that visibility.
That was kind of that block visibility
That was
over
the
here.
opportunity.
Put that, okay.
Right.
Windows, we're gonna put that down as an opportunity. Not a lot of windows at the fire department, and they, like for the offices there, and talking about if we would have to recruit for a fire chief, or even just being able to see out. They don't have any.
As long as we're doing the construction, maybe we do some upgrades.
Yeah. Okay, so this all was with the parking lots, talking again, whether spots were getting blocked or opportunities for how we could accommodate the firefighters. So blocking off all of 2nd Street, we had had some of that discussion, opportunity.
So can I explain that
Yep.
just a moment? On the map here, so this is the parking lot right out here. Here we're sitting in the training room, and this, the firefighter parking space that we're looking at. And there was conversation of closing 2nd Street from here on down and making all of this parking lot for the firefighters when they respond to the call. Another idea, thank you, was to have parking, not necessarily to close it off, but to have parking here when there's a fire and they've already used up this space, okay?
And then along with that was just parking, if we didn't totally block it off, but just allowing them parking on 2nd Street. So just putting up signage, firefighter parking only, because that would be from the exit to the south, because the trucks still have room to get out.
And the truck is always going to be exiting out this way because of the stoplight here. So that would be free.
Then the other thing was the snow removal in the parking lot, just saying that that blocks a few spots on that west side normally, and that would be a weakness. We talked about the helipad, which we also did here. We see that as a challenge, but right now it was brought up that that's not currently approved by MnDOT in order for them to park there anyway, or to fly in. Okay, then we talked about signage, see this as an opportunity when the firefighters are responding. And so we kind of kicked around, like if there's a flashing beacon light, when there's a fire process, so that people that might be coming to City Hall would know that firefighters are going to be coming in quickly. This gets back to that blocking the visibility of the fire department. If all of this is, the building is here, they feel like they kind of got lost back here. Future plans, what about, are we landlocking them? This is an opportunity, and we had kind of talked about that probably the next step would possibly be a substation that we wouldn't see expanding on this footprint right now. They also talked about, in the future plans, was a facelift to this building. How cohesively would the two buildings look together? And depending on whatever structure that was, some of it might have to carry over to a facelift for the present fire department. And the glass doors, that was its opportunity. They just wanted to have more visibility and more natural light.
For the garage doors. Okay,
Into the fire department.
did we hit it or did we miss anything that, or misrepresent anything? Oh, I'm looking in the wrong direction.
No, I think that was a accurate representation of the meeting.
Okay, so now what we
I guess
would,
we can just touch a bit, so the parking, kind of twofold for the parking, obviously, safety as we reply, adrenaline dump, the tones go off and we come in. You know, we had the blinders on a little bit. You know, we obey traffic laws to the fullest extent when we're replying. But, so safety not only for our guys or our firefighters, but also for, you know, if John Q. Public's coming in to visit with someone in the city, that, you know, there's not a traffic incident inside the parking lot. So that was some of it, and then just, you know, having a spot to park.
And that especially came into account when we were talking about reserving some spots over here in the general parking reserving them for the firefighters. Then you might have a little bit more confusion than if it all stays down at this end too. But yes, to not have any safety features. Yes.
Just one more, kind of a clarification on the wash bay, that we do have a truck that responds out of that wash bay, so that was our concern. It's, you know, that we do have a truck that responds out of there, so you know, accurate space or sufficient space to move out of there.
And
was
that's a
concern.
350 dually, right?
Ye-
the grass rig?
It's
Single axle.
yeah, single axle.
One ton.
Yep,
Okay,
Transfer.
yep,
okay. So not the big fire truck,
right,
just to
right,
clarify that.
yep.
Okay, so that gives you an idea of what it is that we're doing. Then I put up some items here, just things to think about, because now we're going to turn over to you to use those pads and your pens and come up with those strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that you see, and then we'll end up putting them up here and working with it. So just to help to brainstorm some things, are there certain building features that you would like to see? What about council chambers, the public, and customer service for them? How about information tech, IT, security, RAC 8, communications, meeting with partners that we have, like the Mid-Minnesota or the EDC? Storage, in my mind, there is never enough storage in a house nor a building, right? So then utilities, and we've got some items to talk about for water, electric, stormwater. The MUC, is there a way to partner with them in all of this? Anything else that comes to mind? And then just did a quick rundown of the list of the different departments in case that sparks some thought in administration, support staff, as well as our administrators, city clerk, engineering, finance, IT, fire, human resources, park and rec, planning and development, police, public works, and wastewater. So pick what you want, just start brainstorming. And this is an individual thing. Yes.
Just to get up to speed, I guess, for the building use study, current square footage that's utilized in the city hall now, and I guess projected square footage needs, has that information been obtained?
Yeah, we have it here somewhere. Current square footage is 20,584. When we took a look at all the different departments and the space that they have, it's broken down by department and that type of thing. I don't have a total on the proposed column. We've just been saying 20,000 square feet as an approximate. That, of course, will be determined when we do work the magic, okay? So we're going to give you 8 minutes or so, or until it looks like everybody is done. So put your thinking caps on, just jot down whatever thoughts that you have, and then we'll be putting them up together, okay? So what are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, or challenges that you see?
Did you want to go over the strengths that you had put up, that we had talked about before?
Oh, thank you for that.
Okay.
What I did is I took the priority list so that we're not all rehashing that same thing. And those priorities were it's a city-owned lot, increased efficiency opportunities, convenient parking, no loss of property tax roll dollars, minimal demolition costs, high visibility, access from First Street, no displacement of employees, and a T1 line on site. Okay? And not connected to the auditorium. So those literally are the priorities we have. Okay? Any other questions? I can almost feel the energy in the room because you're so excited to do this. Have at it.
So after they finish what are they doing?
Then we're going to go around And we're gonna talk about your first one, and we'll find out if anyone else had any similar thoughts, and we'll put them up on the board together, okay? So we'll go through them as a team, what you come up with. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, have fun. If anyone has a bad pen, let me know I've got spares.
I think I'm gonna have plenty of things. I think they're ready, so. Well, my thought is that this might be an opportunity or strength for the fire department to get a substation and free up, space here to be able to enhance what's here, but yet still have a substation, because I know that there's some other things like north of the tracks. It might be an opportunity to move that forward faster. Because not everything would have to stay here, which, solve some of the issues, challenges for the fire department.
Maybe we should ask.
Well, even for responding, I was north in the fire.
Does anybody want
I
to do
was
more
on first
minutes?
bar ranger grant for years.
Okay.
Kathy, maybe we can talk just a little bit about the helipad. Sean and I were just having a sidebar conversation here just to get it out in the open. The helipad currently is not used. Lifelink 3, who's the originator of the service for Wilmer, they have a site out at the airport. They have a new safety person. That new safety person said unless it's a DOT-approved landing site, that they would not use it. So the helipad was used previously 4 to 5 times a year, and the thought is now that it will not be used until that certification could be brought on board. So that's just an added piece that maybe some people might have questions about on the helipad.
Is that just an application process that needs to be, or is it just a location that wouldn't approve, or for the helipad, or?
I don't know if one of the firefighters know that answer. I mean, Frank just told us that, or Chief Hansen just told us that on Thursday night, so.
Part of, and I guess coming from some construction world, it needs to be a defined area with a helipad logo on it that has proper lighting for that. So they have to land on a dedicated helipad, not a, you have to have the logo plate on there, it needs to be leveled off to a certain grade. So our parking lot has some slope to it. They don't want that. They want it to be a big crown in the center, helipad logo on it, clear from obstructions. So there's a lot more, I guess, thought process to go in it than just throwing some cones out in the parking lot. But if it doesn't work, yeah, we land them on the road sometimes, but a dedicated spot, I see the reasoning behind having it be up to the
All right, who'd like to start? Steve?
I see that this being a strength or an opportunity in that it may allow the fire station to, or the substation to accelerate, which would allow the fire department to move some of their equipment here, which would possibly free up space for the city hall, or, I mean, it'd help with the ISO rating, and maybe the fire department can talk a little bit about that as far as having a substation and response times to the outer, especially north of the tracks.
Great. Does anyone else have that item?
I had future growth in needs, city office / the fire department.
Okay, let's put those together on opportunities. Okay? Next, Ike.
I think that one of the weaknesses is that by putting the building here, we're gonna reduce the outdoor area that they use for training. And I know that I've been here on training nights, and, we use the parking lot for a lot of stuff out here. And so that's something that's gonna have to be compromised or moved. And so that's one of the weaknesses.
Great. Anyone else have that item? Okay. Sean?
Well, I was part of most of those other ones, so I just put on here, this side would have First Street and downtown connection instead of one or the other.
Great. Anyone else have that?
I had, if we close Second Street, we're gonna have to get buy-in of the partners from the clinic and Rice Hospital if we're gonna close Second Street. So I see that as a challenge.
Good.
One of the weaknesses I have is a small site and footprint. We're trying to kind of shoehorn things in here, so.
Weakness? Anyone else have either of those?
I kind of have something on the future expansion of the city offices that we have to, so I would say that kind of shoehorns with that one,
Okay,
or fits with that one.
great. Julie, did you have one you wanted to share?
I just put on that, to bring IT together with city staff. I guess I would see that as a strength.
All right.
They'd all be in one place.
I have a question
Or
with
an
that.
opportunity.
Is that it, IT, when you're talking IT, does that include RAC 8?
It
That's
does
what
in
I
my
meant,
mind.
Yeah,
sorry.
okay.
Yeah, that's in my mind.
Okay,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
IT is what's.
Yes, sure.
Does anyone else have?
I have something similar to that,
Okay.
and then more customer service with access to multiple departments, including the fire department.
Yeah. Very good. Okay,
But that's kind of with the, we had, that kind of goes with increased efficiency.
Yeah.
Probably.
okay. Okay, Fernando?
I want to echo what the firefighter said, that I worry about the safety of the firefighters and the public using the same space under an emergency condition.
Yeah, that's,
Safety as a weakness
that's what I had too.
or a threat? That maybe it's, okay. Robert?
Steve had that one too.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
it's
you.
the access and traffic law, like if
Thank
there's
you.
council meetings or something.
Great.
I guess, I think it's a great opportunity for the city to be represented well professionally. So in a, I guess, up and coming visual and aesthetic world, whether it's
Yep,
obtaining staff or attracting businesses, that
Yes.
has a representation of the city.
yes. There was conversation about that. Yeah, that was great,
I
thank
kind
you.
of have the same thing, update the look of the existing city building.
Okay, great.
I had that as well.
Got that one also?
Mhm.
Okay,
I think kind of tying off that too, as employee morale is a strength,
yes.
comes from those.
You are valued when you're willing to invest in, right? A pleasant space to work in. Yep, I agree completely. Okay?
One thing that I had would be, maybe a potential challenge would be the cost of, not only we're looking at a new building, but also, if it's gonna be incorporated with the fire department, that has to be, taken into consideration of what it's gonna cost to kind of match the old and the new.
Okay. Anyone else have those? Just Howard?
Possibly moving engineering to public works. I know it'd be taking engineering out of the city hall, which you probably don't want to do, but it would free up some space in the city hall. And public works works alongside engineering quite a bit. So it'd be nice to have them in the same building.
If you haven't read, Ike had an item in the
I don't know if
book
it's
that.
an opportunity or
in
a
regards to that?
weakness.
Yeah.
I had it as an
I view that as an
opportunity,
opportunity.
just
Okay.
for a couple of reasons, go ahead.
Well, I think it's an opportunity because one of the things that, we talked about it at the retreat, there were some people that had a concern about not wanting to spread us out. But when you're looking at emergency management side of things, you want your people, particularly in those critical infrastructure things. So if you would move public works and engineering out there, it would be advantageous to have them away from where the fire station was. If you're putting the two buildings together, then you're putting two eggs in one basket where you don't need to. So that's why I've seen it as an opportunity.
And the other opportunity I saw potential is that it potentially reduces the footprint needed, which I had on I think I got footprint up there, or the small footprint as a weakness, but it potentially reduces that footprint by moving half a dozen people and files out.
Okay, good. This popcorn style then, who would like to go next?
I've got another opportunity, I don't think it's been mentioned, is increase community participation because of the location change and on First Street. When people know where things are, then they tend to utilize that a lot more. So we might encourage everything from nonprofits to community organizations to even people attending our council meetings because they know where it's at, it's in an easy location, and so they come.
It's on the mental map. Okay.
I have, I think this is gonna be an opportunity for any of them, but establishment of green space, and I've used my own vision of a historic park in the existence of our current, city hall.
Love it. Anyone else, green space? I'm gonna,
Yep.
okay. And I'm gonna actually pull your historic park out if you don't mind. One of the things I'd like to do is to add some history, I don't know what I've got here, historical photos in the hallway. And a part of that is also the display of the antique fire truck, which is an important item for our fire folks, so.
I see two different points here. One is the existing one as a challenge, and the other one is an opportunity or a strength. Which way do you see it? For the green space that would happen at the existing city hall.
I saw that as an opportunity.
Okay. Then, on-site green space,
That's a challenge.
yeah, okay,
I agree, that's what that one is too, a
yeah,
challenge for onsite.
okay.
Okay, and that's an opportunity to bring in this historical thing in. Well, one more item in here and I had is, I'd really like to have our conference rooms named after historical people such as Leon Wilmer. And inside the conference room, have a picture of him and a little bit of a story of him. So bring that historical flavor to the site, so. Okay, others?
I think on that note, having more meeting spaces and just like a variety of sizes, that would definitely be an opportunity for that environment.
A variety of sizes.
And
Good.
got office lease as well, space potential.
Right,
I have
office
shared
space.
space.
Shared space.
Shared space with mental income for these.
Okay. All right, others?
With this big build, I don't know if it's gonna be a big building, but with the fire department and the office building, I'm worried about water runoff.
Okay,
Oh.
you wanna talk about that, Sean?
As much as you want. I got stormwater as a challenge or a threat,
Well, okay.
or a weakness,
Well-
actually.
Yeah.
Just this afternoon, this morning, pulled some elevations off the storm. That actually, there's two storm catch basins on the south side of the building here. Here, I'll show you,
Yeah,
if that's all right.
this is worth taking a minute for, so, because it is not a small challenge, but,
So there's a catch basin right in here off this patio, the back side of the building, and then there's another catch basin or manhole at the base of the large tree. And then the storm runs, and then there's a catch basin right here at the edge of the pavement, and then it runs out into, there's a low spot out in here somewhere, and then out into the street. The problem is, these elevations are such that it can't be rerouted to the line that's in trot, because the line that's in trot's already a foot higher than the pipe here. So without completely redoing roofs of all the buildings and the patio runoff, we may have to leave those storm catch basins in place, in which case might tweak our footprint or location a little bit.
Where would you run it, to the east?
There's no storm drain over here. The only storm drain is in Second and in Trot, and then down in this intersection.
Right,
And so there's an outside opportunity to run it down this direction,
right.
but the manhole is out here in the middle of the lane traffic, and so
Yeah.
you're significant cost.
Right,
And a new hospital sign and a driveway and things in this direction, so. There's a chance, instead of butting the building up to this wall here, you
Right.
can leave that space there, back to the green space. Maybe you leave a T-shaped green space there, because you're also gonna have to relocate the water line down further south. And so maybe you leave that section of tree, or section of green space as an opportunity. Maybe that's your chance to display your fire truck. I mean, I don't know, there's a couple of opportunities there. But it potentially limits our option of attaching the building to this building on the first floor.
right,
Not saying we couldn't go a second floor, attached skyway, anything at that point, so.
right, okay.
so I'm gonna ask Robert he brought a a visual there and has a suggestion also. So do you want to take a minute?
Sure. So very, I guess, preliminary and crude, somewhat elementary style. But talking with the guys after the meeting and, I guess since, the big thing that came up was the safety and entering in and how can we divide it out. So, by Saturday afternoon, after doing a little pub ed, we walked around the parking lot like a fool for a while. So one of the ideas, I guess, that, I'll just put this here for now, that came up was that green space that's out there now, having that be a First Street entrance and parking lot right here. So that's directly to the east here. So to put parking lot up there, you get sure about 10 to 12 parking spots. So this is all off GIS mapping and literally old school cut and paste. This is the Schwagman parking lot size and it's the same square footage. So very crude. Then this parking lot is actually captured from family practice and just laying the parking lot out on the existing parking lot, shifting it. This isn't adjusting the curb setback, which I guess we can go there. And then building more along this way than this way, so more east and west versus north and south. Again, off the GIS, I stepped this out and did the basic. That's about a 13,500 square foot per footprint. The catch basin, which I kind of just walking the land figured that's going to be an issue. All this catch basin stuff stays the same. The pickup on it, we could grade that to the parking lot. My thought, this white area that connects the two is right in front of the current wash bay, and I envision a glass display showcasing our old timer, and then we could flip flop our grass rig where our old timer currently sits here, so we could put the grass rig in there to be able to respond. That thing would kind of just be on display, accessible if we needed around funerals and parades. Seldomly, but it'd be on public display. It's a good transition point from fire department activities if we want to show it, if we have a fire department function, to City Hall. There's I guess a transition point in between the two. So again, I apologize for the crudeness of it, but just kind of, I guess, some of the check boxes that came out of our meeting that we had as far as parking, public coming in, firefighters coming in. We could divvy this out accordingly to have some staff parking back here and this half or along the building be fire department. However it gets, sliced and diced, but this allows some main public entrance. I guess when they came and talked, I just envisioned a beautiful City Hall. Somebody comes through town, says, hey, I want to stop. There's some signage issues to get them to where they need to be to get into the building. So you could have an employee entrance on the back side and then a public or a main entrance on the front side.
Can I add two more things that does, just thinking, first I'd seen that, so on the fly here, it allows us to leave the water line alone, because you got parking lot over it instead of building.
That runs right here.
Yep, and then it also moves that access, the existing access, further away from the intersection.
Okay,
Keep it for sharing.
we'll put it up here somewhere, just to get it stuck up there.
Kathy, I received a phone call this morning from an individual that is concerned about the tree. There's a tree on the east side here, and this is a threat. It was put in by the German teachers. The German teachers actually pooled their money and came over here, and it was at about the time that the wall was taken down, the Berlin Wall. And actually, the city administrator at the time, along with Bruce Peterson, were given a section of that Berlin Wall that they were given as a token. And so the tree has significant importance to not only the individual who spoke with me today, but also it came from the teachers, and they actually spent their own money to pay for that. One thing I've learned being in public service for as long as I've been is that when you start messing with trees, you start messing with people, things that people think a lot about. I had remembered some of the history, but I had another quick history lesson today, and so he had asked me to bring that up today. I said I would, and so that's something we need to think about. And it's a lot bigger than I thought it was. I thought it was a smaller tree, but he thinks it was planted about 1992 or 93.
1984, there's a plaque on the building.
What year?
84, there's a plaque on the building.
I know there's a plaque there, so
84 is the year.
84, okay, well, it's later than, earlier than I thought.
Okay, oh, good, thank you. Anyone else have the tree on their radar screen? All right, what else have folks got?
I've got, and it's gonna be like I've talked before, I think as, seems like government is always mandating something, are we gonna be able to expand for the different services? And I like the idea of the, different conference rooms and stuff like that, but then that starts to take up office space too. I just hope this is built for tomorrow, not just today.
So one of the items I had is to build for future expansion and have it ready to go if we want to put a third floor on. If you remember when we were talking about this, we wondered if Merle had foreseen that opportunity and had built it strong enough for that. You don't know that. So, good. Okay, others?
Well, I got one that just got shut down, and I'm okay with that, but I had combined entrance for larger training facilities and chambers, which I've crossed off and just combined facility issues. But then you can probably just put this with the same, it's square footage assumption without knowing the defined purpose of our building.
Any others?
Yeah.
Anyone else? Where did you want those, Sean? Weakness?
Well,
Challenge? What is your thought? What is your preference?
I would say what the building is gonna be used for, we have to do at some point, so, it's an opportunity, I suppose, or is it a defined weakness at this point, because we don't know the design, we know we have to do that. So I see it as, I don't even know where to put it, to be honest with you.
Well, some of that work has been done because in our packets, the size of the spaces has been done.
Well, I understand that there's a size, but what constitutes that size? What's gonna be in this building? How is it gonna function? Because now we're even talking about, well, we could move engineering to public work. All those things are all still grassrooted and growing, and so without knowing those, a firm footprint seems strange to me unless you define exactly what's going in there. So to me, it's an opportunity, I suppose.
What else have you got?
Just from an economic development standpoint, just a continued spur of development along this section of First Street, with Legacy right across, and a really great site across from Legacy to the east of them, for development. I think that would be a huge strength of being right there on First Street.
We'll have to do that, more desirable business properties would be made available, I guess.
Others?
Access from First Street to the firefighters when they're responding on call as a threat. That was something that came up on Thursday night as well,
Okay,
under threats. And then under strength, the timeline to build, and it would not displace current employees during the build. I think we kind of have that up there already, but
Sean, you got your hand on one?
Yeah, this one's been discussed, but council chambers and city hall is definitely an opportunity.
Yeah. Others?
Well, this goes against what we just talked about, but an opportunity, potential to sell city hall instead of demo it, to recoup some of the costs for demo. And I'll just finish mine up. Definite strength is to build new versus remodel.
Yeah. Okay, other thoughts? I have a couple here. Do you want to talk about the water? Is that?
so in the water supply coming into the building for the sprinkler system, there already is a riser there. And so that would be, that would actually be a strength. The water riser would be a strength, not a weakness.
Oh.
It would be a strength that you wouldn't have that additional cost when you go to sprinkle the building, because that is already, it could actually be both possibly, but the actual sprinkler riser would be a benefit. Could be a threat in the fact that we have to relocate, but we've already talked about that in other areas.
Robert?
I guess I don't know if it'd be under a weakness or where it'd be, but the fire department has a generator, I don't know if it would tie into the same power draw, or if it'd be sized appropriately to be a backup generator for City Hall, but that would be, you talk emergency management and conference rooms and that, if it is able to be tied in, it would be, I guess, a good strength to have backup power on site.
ADA compliance? Or-
That'd be a strength. Current building is not, nor this building is either.
I envision workstations for flexibility, that you can increase or decrease the size of a department without having to move walls. So the workstations and the offices for department heads and administration. And there's a fire hydrant on the northwest corner. That would be a problem if we're trying to expand the parking lot. Financing internally is an opportunity. The Mid-Minnesota Commission. As a partner, do they come with us or don't they come with us? And what's their desire on that? They're moving from basement rent to a nice new building. What do we do about the lease rate? I think we talked about complementing the fire station, moving RAC into City Hall. I'm gonna put this up there though because it also references selling of the RAC 8 building. Could be to the Minnesota Development Commission.
Would that be an opportunity, Julie?
Got it? I was looking for the other thing.
It's up there someplace.
Actually, your idea of having a First Street entrance maybe takes care of this issue, but my concern is if we're on First Street, but if they're coming in from Second Street, we don't want to have the First Street look like the backyard entrance kind of a thing. So, sorry. We now have a drive-up drop box, and I don't know how often it gets used. Not often? Not worth putting one in?
No, it would be,
Okay.
in a location desirable.
Okay. We need to make snow removal a priority for the parking lot, so we didn't have those issues. Do we have a panic button now for the police department? I want a panic button for the police department. And fire department, all right. Just for Shelby, I think that we should build some kind of accommodation for press and meeting rooms so they don't have to try and find a chair with rungs or have the computer fall off their lap. And if you were at last night's meeting, you would understand that. But when we're dreaming, why not, right? So, and multiple exits in the council chambers for security purposes. Okay, a lot of storage. Are there any other thoughts? Any other items?
I was just gonna, I like the location. I was gonna say perception of not being downtown. I know we're in the downtown region or area, but we're not downtown. That's, I don't know if that's a weakness, but.
Okay. Other parting thoughts? Okay. All right, the next step is actually the really hard part of this. And that is to take a look at what we've got up here. And in a way, we've already started some of those conversations, like with this. So how do we take what we have as a strength or a weakness or an opportunity or a challenge, and we put pieces together to come up with something that's an, oh, that's not a bad idea kind of an idea, right? So I'll just throw out an example would be parking is an issue. We have Mid-Minnesota Development Commission that we recognize as a partner. And we have bringing RAC 8 into the City Hall, right? So if we made that move, I don't know how many employees Minnesota has this, like 7, 5, 7? That's 5 parking spaces versus 1 parking space. If we would lease or sell the RAC 8 building to Mid-Minnesota and give them a place to land, that would be an opportunity for them to have a nice space, us not to have as much parking pressure, and we have a saleable building if they choose to buy that generates revenue, right? So that's the sort of thing I'm saying. let's take a look at this and, or say, here are some challenges and here are ways that we can resolve those challenges, or here are opportunities and these are things that we can really do to make it work. So what I'd like to do is say, here's an idea that we get from it, okay, that we don't want to lose track of. We want to convey this message strongly to someone who we might be having do this design and schematic. And then let's also look at, if we're going to assign some tasks for people to be able to follow up on anything, okay, some action items. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, this isn't the easy part, but it's the fruitful part.
I think one of the ideas that we've already talked about is the fact of, do we relocate public works and engineering, their staff out to different off-site locations, which would save us, would you say 6 employee spaces?
At full capacity.
And then the action for that would be, is we have to determine the size, their size needs, and then what would that take away from the site?
And we had some schematics on that too, so we've got some of the work done.
Here, you can have this.
No, you do that one.
Okay.
Okay. So, the action
Someone's gonna have
was,
to actually read this at some point.
The action was, is that we need to determine the space,
determine space.
Julie, let's move these out.
space needs, and then also what it would look like, so we need a schematic of what that would look like. And Sean said they already had some of that drafted.
Yeah, we sketched some of that up already with
Oh,
existing versus
I see what you're saying.
proposed.
Okay, I'll
square
slide
footage.
down farther this way if you want that side. Okay, is that fair? You know your way?
Say Julie,
Yes.
that leg on that side.
Might want to kick that off.
There you go.
Okay.
That make you nervous?
A little bit.
Okay. Do they need to get up to be able to look at these, or?
If you want to, make yourselves to home.
I guess, going on that idea, kind of what Sean spoke of, not only public works or engineering moving to public works, but the Mid-Minnesota Commission, or whatever entity that you just talked about, RAC 8 coming in, so we're trading horses back and forth. Are we gaining square footage, are we shrinking square footage, so total building use, does it need to be 13,000 square feet per floor, or does it need to be 9,000 square feet per floor? And then I guess, going off of what you said, for design purposes, is it gonna be a cubicle design interior, or is it going to be an office structure with multiple, meeting rooms, et cetera? Heritage Bank just went to, more of an open floor concept, cubicles with off-site meeting rooms for doing business. So to truly get the need of the building and the size needed, I think the whole usage of who's coming and who's going, and like you said, if they need to go and if the rent's gonna go up, are they willing to go to that?
Someone needs to talk to Mid-Minnesota and what their desires
I
are.
know their expectation was that they would come in with the redesign.
Right.
Because they have a contract, that's what they assumed. I can tell you, I'm on that, so that's exactly.
Oh, okay. That was my next question. What's our obligation to them?
She said we have a contract with them.
For how
So
long?
I do not know the length that was just done.
It was been recently renewed.
Yeah,
I hate to say off the top of my head, but it's not anytime soon, I want to say that.
We did renew that since I've been on the council, so it's been within the last 2
But
years.
they do want to move with us. Their expectation is that we will build space for them. So that's their expectation. And I talked to them about it and how much space they need and so forth, and how many employees, he gave me that information. But, when we're talking about, moving public works and IT possibly in, mid-Minnesota, we've had a lot of conversation about putting IT in the auditorium. And, the fiber optics is tied into that building. And we could actually put RAC 8 and IT on that second floor in the auditorium. And so, that's space that we already own. It could be remodeled. The cost would be very minimal. And then also that, reduces having to put them on this site. So that's an opportunity to consider.
I just want to point out that anytime we're talking about moving anything, there's gonna be a cost in that moving them somewhere else that are not being accounted for on the Grand Master list. So every time we say, well, we're going to move them, there is an associated cost with the remodel of where you're moving them to that has to be taken into account. So actions would be not just does the space need, but what is that cost of redeveloping where they're moving to has to be taken into consideration.
If you think about Rack 8 right now and the square footage for one person, and versus being able to sell that building and bring that person in, as a customer service issue, if I want to stop by and pick up the recording equipment, but Rudy's not there, someone else would be at City Hall to be able to help me out from a customer service point of view. And I think there are a lot of good wins that can come from it, including selling the building to help offset whatever.
And I would say that that's a very good point, but also you have to know of what the infrastructure is into that building, and all of that would have to be moved, and some of it is probably outdated and would come with an added expense.
Some of
So
it's cable.
But all we look at is square footage, and we can move the square footage around, understanding there's more to that formula in that you can't simply just move the square footage around. There is going to be associated costs in relocating materials and redoing those spaces. So I mean, when we're talking space, I get that, but it has to come with an accompanying talk about finances and removal and moving of systems.
So under ideas, we put Rack 8 and IT to auditorium.
You know, one of the things we
things-
talked about is a one-stop shop.
Yeah, one of the things, if you move Rack 8 to the second floor, that is not currently handicapped accessible, doesn't meet ADA. And so, I mean, then you'd have to put an elevator in there, and all of that. So, I mean, that's something you have to think about as well.
If we have older equipment at Rack 8, is there anything in the CIP that has them purchasing replacement equipment in the future? That you would
Not
move it up?
Not to a large extent, it'd be primarily smaller type items, but
Yeah, there's
Okay.
no high-end items. I've recently looked at that, the budget last time when I talked to, IT about what's the future needs and, future cost and everything. And, right now, there's no high-end items in the near future.
Okay. Cool. So we would need to investigate what it would take to move
Rack 8.
Rack 8, yeah. Okay?
I guess with that, you said if Rack 8 is, I mean, you just have to have a big building in there, one-man shop, and pretty minimal square footage needs or requirements. And then you're talking about remodeling or updating a second story, not ADA compliant. I'm not sure why would, I mean, you're talking a couple hundred square feet that they need, or, I mean,
I think the thing with the Rack 8, it's more than, like Sean is alluding to it, it's more than just square footage. It's the technologies that they have that they would have to bring over. They've been wired for high definition television, they've got all that equipment, and then they would have to coordinate with Charter, and there would be a possibility that we might lose our agreements with Charter, would jeopardize our coverage, and so it's not just moving them because we think we can move them. There's more pieces than just picking it up and putting it in. It's a complicated process, and I'm afraid if we took the chance of trying to up and root them, we might jeopardize our contracts with Charter, and they make, Rack 8 makes money for the city. They have a franchise agreement with the city, and I don't think we want to jeopardize that.
Okay. So we'll check into the contract.
Yeah, that's huge.
Okay?
You have to help me. Why do you think that it would jeopardize the contract? Because they would still be operating the same way, just from a different location.
Yeah, but then there's like, I don't know what type, like headline, head ends,
Yes.
and they'd have to move the head ends, and this might be the opportunity for Charter to say, hey, I don't know if we want to do that. And if we do that, we're going to put the cost on you. I just think there's the guys to talk to would be Ross and Rudy. I just think that we would be potentially losing an opportunity by moving this. We would lose something by moving this. I think we should be very careful before we move our rack gate and assume that it can be done by just picking up a box. There's more to it because of the high fiber optics and those sorts of things.
Duly noted. For the sake of time, we're gonna keep
Yep.
moving.
Thank you.
Okay,
And you know what? We're brainstorming here, right?
Right.
You throw out an idea that might lead to another idea that leads to another idea, that's the real home run hit. So, do it in increments, but, okay. Other thoughts?
I mean, I think a lot of this is gonna depend upon, the feedback we get from the council on, next Monday. Hopefully they've been keeping up to date with the minutes and that, hopefully people are staying connected for those that are not on the committee, so that we don't have to go back and reinvent the wheel, so to speak, but, I think a lot of it will depend on that, and then, planned meeting with the public on the following night, the 16th, we're gonna get a lot of feedback at that point, so. I think we really need to be at a point where we're still like sponges, we're still accepting information.
but I think no matter where the site is, the moving of rack 8 is an issue.
It
that
is.
I think we need to figure out.
Right, and I mean, if so they don't currently have a signed contract with us, they refuse to sign a contract. I mean, I don't wanna get into the weeds here, but I mean, they brought two things to us that said, either sign it or we're just gonna go away. So, they're not playing nice in the sandbox either, so. And I don't wanna digress, but.
Right. We're not the only one that hasn't settled. And
Right.
and like you said, they're not playing nice in the sandbox.
We need to resolve the parking issue, and I don't know if that can be resolved before we get the footprint actually determined, or if those are gonna happen together.
Well, the parking issue is gonna be an issue no matter what we do, but I mean, I really like this openness of changing the design here to accommodate some of that. I mean, some of my questions I had before, a Second Street, the parking, what that would look like as well. I mean, there's issues, and I guess we were sort of relying for information as a council of, Sarah put together a little formula of how many spots we would potentially need. If we're gonna pick a spot, we're gonna have to probably clamp down on that and get it much more precise, because right now it's in this range, but again, it's gonna change based on some of these other pieces. I mean, my assumption was Mid-Minnesota would be coming on with us, that rack would not. Whatever that looks like, that number moves, and so we're gonna have to at some point get it closer so we don't have such a range of what that parking could look like. I mean, and I love all these ideas. This one of moving this building slightly to somewhere else, it makes a whole lot of sense and solves a whole lot of problems. And as long as we keep letting that happen organically and we haven't got our mind set that it has to be a particular way, I think we're in a good place.
I think the parking issue is one of my major concerns as well, and, I think relocating the building, north to south and moving it off the front and then converting that to the parking.
Exactly.
And then I also like the idea of closing off that street and adding that additional parking and then making that fire personnel exclusively, because during the day, you're gonna have city personnel, you're gonna have to have a designated parking lot as well. So I think, and I agree with the mayor, we have to get some cooperation and make sure that everybody understands it's beneficial. Because you're always gonna have somebody say, well, that's the way I drive to work. I understand that, but I think that's definitely a good challenge and opportunity that would make up for those lost spaces.
Well, and there's a lot of parking in the vicinity. And you got the next block to the west is virtually all parking, the next block to the north is virtually all parking. Not all owned by the city, but there's a lot of parking in the area.
And evening parking for events. Okay.
I was gonna say, I think there's an opportunity, as we're talking about moving the city hall here, with the fire department, talking about maybe, we've always had conversation, like you mentioned, Steve, of a location north of town. You know, that's planting another seed. That's getting another conversation going. That's having the fire department to talk about, okay, maybe what trucks do we move out of town and allow for expansion for educational facilities in that building. So I think that's an opportunity to kind of partner with the fire department and the city and allow them to think about future growth also.
Some of that would be driven by ISO requirements and where the city would benefit the greatest. Well, they want 2 engines out there, an engine and a stick, and then build it accordingly to maximize the ISO efficiencies.
One of the opportunities here was to talk to Schweiglemans and see if there was an interest in selling. Are we interested in pursuing that?
I was gonna ask, is there when we approached it before, was there a price tag for just half? I mean, did we pursue that at all?
That conversation didn't happen. I just was looking for the total price and.
That was 1.3 or 1.4 million?
1.3, and, you know, he owns all 3 parcels, I believe it's 3 parcels, and then the entire building. But no, we didn't discuss breaking that off, I don't know.
And go with
I
this
have to get
one.
my
You
Missouri
don't need to go
training
with
hat
it.
out to negotiate that.
And that negates, I mean, I know some of the other stuff was to not take tax revenue off the books, and all of a sudden you're taking, I think there's 3 or 4 tenants in there that you're displacing to, you know, have tax revenue off of that property.
And your plan there doesn't do that. We keep it
Negative.
right- Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's all city-owned property, it's maximizing setbacks and, you know, we're putting parking, but, you know, the biggest, and I guess Sean probably can speak on the water drainage issue. It's hard to fix that without, I mean, it's hard to change grade.
I think it's also notable that that building there, you said was like 13,000 square feet.
That's roughly the square footage.
Roughly, we could probably, you know, you might not have that large of a footprint on that site, which would open up even more parking on that site too.
Okay. I'm just trying to look at what's up here.
Kathy, another idea that was mentioned earlier, I don't see written on there is, did I hear somebody right saying about partnering with the EDC? I just heard that, I think, yesterday for the first time, so.
So, I've mentioned that, but didn't have a thorough time for conversation. And it wasn't an overwhelming, we can't wait to move into a new city hall. So, you know, I'll just put it out there that, and I think that the director was aware of that idea and had probably had time to think about it ahead of time, so. But I've
And I
not
don't
had any
know-
conversations with the county or anything.
I don't, in my mind, I don't know what the big advantage to moving them over would be, and it could be
It would be because
ignorant on it, but.
that relationship with planning and development. If you're working with a potential business for development, you're having a conversation, let's just go right next door and talk to Sarah.
Aaron has
So-
to walk less
Drive
to come see us.
So,
But that
but,
feeds into, I mean, I know it's up there for future growth or expansion for future needs, whether it's 3rd story, sizing it appropriately, not filling every office day one, however it be that, you know, because I'm sure they're under contract where they're at, whether it's 2 years or 10 years down the road, that if the opportunity becomes available, that you could act upon it.
Well, I like the fact that we only have 5 action steps. I thought we'd have 3 pages of action steps. So, I mean, it means that we're whittling, means that we're coming together.
At this point.
Right, yeah.
One of the items that had been mentioned was a timeline. Sean, not to put you on the spot, did you have a chance to speak with others in regard to that timeline?
Yeah, spoke with a consultant or two, and by and large, what I got for, if given the go-ahead today, to bid date would be 3 to 6 months. And so my, at least double of the 2-month time frame was maybe even a little short, so. Which is, I mean, good for them, they're busy, but that's what I was getting for a time frame on that end of it. And put Jim on the, or Andrew on the spot, but as far as construction time frame, I didn't make those calls. They might have an idea, you know, if we're talking 6 months, a year, 18 months, whatever we are for the construction part of it.
Any other thoughts or action items that we should be doing?
I guess, Ted, to come off of that, if there's a, you know, the heating cycle came into play with current, so is there a timeline or an expedition that needs to be built into the construction bid that it needs to be completed by for a drop dead or a move-in date as an action item? Because otherwise, there's the incurred cost. I mean, part of homes that are up there, we have to move twice, so that's an incurred cost of $50,000, whatever it is. But I think it would be beneficial to expedite the construction and pay that in construction expedition fees versus moving and removing 2 times over to not make the date and move in 6 months later.
Well, the other theory on that is that in the capital planning for next year, I just go ahead and put in to replace that burner in City Hall, which ties back into a potential opportunity to not demo it and sell it, and it's done and ready to go, so.
So that softens the move.
Yeah, and it's about, I think the last number we got was about 75,000 for that. We have to do the auditorium anyway next year, so.
So it's $75,000 investment, and then I guess saleable property.
Yep, potentially, yep.
X amount of dollars.
And you're right, you don't wanna put that in and then demo it. I mean, you don't wanna do that, but, you know, that might kinda tip the scales one way or the other in that.
We're going to the council with this concept in mind. Do we want to bring in the conversation about City Hall and whether it's demolished or not Monday night? Or is that getting too far ahead of ourselves?
And do something with it.
Yep. Or is it just part of the conversation? We don't need a decision or a recommendation.
I don't know, from our committee, we talked that green space is something valuable that we'd like to see. I don't know if the rest of the council will be in on that or not. But in addition to your construction move-in date, I'll bring it up again, there also needs to be the contingency out. If we're not redoing the heat, there has to be we're moving the workers out by such a date to do a relocation if we're not gonna have a facility to move in at a time. So I still think that needs to be put in the timeline as well. If it looks like the project's gonna be extended and we're not gonna be done, we're not having to be moving people in January and February. We need to be relocated before that.
So we'll know that by this fall and we can put that plan in place
Absolutely.
in December. Create a contingency plan.
You know, I think one of the other things that we have to make sure we don't lose sight of, and it dovetails right into what Sean just said, and that is that there is no park for children downtown. And if you drive through the downtown area and you look at how many children are getting on buses every day, that green space can incorporate a neighborhood park that has some playground equipment, because we all know that when kids are outside playing, having fun, it's better not only for the kids, but also better for mom and dad too.
Or weakness right now, okay.
So, all right.
No park.
Looking at the time, it's 1:15. Any parting thoughts in regard to this?
I was wondering about action items. Should we ask the department heads that currently use our building how much space they need so we can plan accordingly, or do we know that?
Ingen did that.
It's been
Yeah,
done.
it's
It's
been
been
done.
done. Okay, thank you.
Other thoughts?
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you to think of a word that describes how you're feeling about this process and where we're at right now, okay? Just kind of check in, just one word. And then we've got some folks that would like to have some public comment time, okay? All right? Who wants to start?
Enthusiastic.
Enthusiastic.
Engaged.
Hungry.
Get two of those. Two on that one.
I was hungry before I came, yeah. Others?
I'm proud.
Positive.
Interested.
Hopeful? Hopeful? Megan, I'm gonna put you on the spot too.
I'd say excited, enthusiastic.
Kurt?
Hopeful's a good word,
How about, it's reserved optimism.
Reserved optimism.
Is that fair?
That
You can do 2 words, I'm okay with
I was
that.
gonna say
It's
guarded.
a hyphen.
Yes, I was trying to figure out. That's funny, because I only added 2 words too, mine was guardedly optimistic.
Julie?
I'm with them.
Thoughtful. I thought
Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of thought. People have been thoughtful.
I'd say excited. Who we got? Ike?
Dave?
Dave? Yeah.
I'm excited. I got nothing, put me on the spot.
All right. Okay, thank you all. Appreciate your time and effort, and feel free to forward any additional thoughts on. And it'll be real interesting to see what Monday night brings, right? Because that'll really send a clear message as to what our next marching steps are. So I'm going to open it up for public comment. I know that Dirk has some things he wanted to display, so I'm going to let you display those items. But I'm going to ask Jim and Andrew if you want to speak while he's getting things set up, okay?
Sure, thank you. First of all, I applaud your process and your foresight into what you're putting together here. This will certainly help the design professionals when they come in, and knowing that you have a true understanding and a true idea of what you want to move into and what you want constructed is very, very important. Certainly for the end product, but also in keeping that very aggressive schedule that you're hoping to move into. So just want to go on record as stating our interest in the project and offering the city any help in the construction management of the project. So any questions for us, we're certainly here for you. Thank you.
All right, Andrew Lickmus?
Can I ask a question? So, so you've heard what we talked about a little bit, and you know the deadline we have of the district heat. Do you foresee a problem with that? I mean, I know a lot of it is in the design part, but on the construction side, and then on the design part, do you see issues with our timeline?
Well, I guess I can speak to that a little bit, put a little bit of thought in there. I think what's in right now is about 6 months of construction time. I think that is a little aggressive for what you guys are doing, but until you have the final design, it's kind of difficult to see. So I was kind of, wondering what the dates and what that flexibility is in the last 2 months. I think 8 months is really doable. One thought that I've been having is I know there's some on the design and making decisions as we go through, but there would be potential to do some fast tracking up front to me to get an envelope package and some foundation going. So that's just an idea to put out there, I guess, to keep you guys on the timelines you have. When Sean says the 3 to 6 months on design, it would give you some time to fine tune some of the interior design and some of that final layout on the interior, if you look in your footprint and some of that. So that's one thought that I would have. And then I was just going to say, I lost my word. I had a word for you, but I guess I'm impressed. I just want to thank you guys for your service. I'm impressed with the meeting today and the discussion you have, and the positive and the process you're going through. And so I guess kudos to you guys.
So just a comment in regard to the construction end of it. I simply pulled 6 months out of it rather than in a document that we received, that we have more time for than getting in the ground by too late in the fall. So would you explain what you mean by an envelope and what you're...
Well, to me, in
Those
Minnesota,
are
right, this is
details
where we
terms.
build. In Minnesota, the envelope is essentially the foundation, the exterior is shallow. Once you have that in place, you can put temp heat, you can do what you need to do to keep construction going without affecting you much. Obviously, if you're not enclosed by January or something like that, you know, you got issues. Depends on the winter, but the last couple, you know, you can be slowed down pretty good. So, you know, it's about getting that stuff in the fall and getting yourself off, and so you're ready for that when it hits. And that's the part where you can actually split your package a little bit, so you concentrate and you have to do your pre-programming and some rough layouts, but you would be able to, once you kind of establish a footprint and overall building design, just get out a structural package, because you have some lead times with structural steel and detailing and some of those long lead time items too that you want to get ahead of, and that give you time still to meet with some of your user groups on where the data ports go and exact, you know, maybe the office layout exactly interior, but it could buy you a little bit of time on the design side to finish those, so to overcome that hurdle of the 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for allowing me 5 minutes. Today I wanted to kind of circle back to something that the council has talked to before and just get it on public record. I'm not a big public speaker and the camera makes me nervous, but I'll do my best to get through it with a script. So it's a possibility, like I say, that was considered at least partially by the council almost 2 years ago. The council at that time and the mayor actually toured one of the buildings, and that was back on July 17, 2017. The solution I'll be suggesting isn't far away at all from the current City Hall that has served Wilmer well, as we all know, for 50 years or so. It's a solution that I emailed to the full council and the media last Friday, and the email contained the presentation and the slides that I'm going to be presenting pretty quickly today. So all of that said, the solution involves mainly the combination of two 100 by 150 foot parcels back-to-back downtown properties. That includes the historic City Auditorium and the Harbor Hank building and its adjacent parking lot. So let's get into the details here on slide 1. It's a little high up here, so you're missing a little bit of what some of the top content is, but I'll fill that in. This focuses on the south elevation or the side or the facade, whatever you want to call it, as it currently exists. At the top of the slide, you'll see that each building is 150 feet in length. So that's 300 feet in total, which is edge sidewalk to edge sidewalk, the full width of the actual block. A little bit of detail on the auditorium. It has a footprint that fills the entire 15,000 square foot property. It's had recent upgrades and north of $1 million or so from what I've heard along the way. It's well utilized for a number of events and activities. But it has a 2,300 square foot stage, which is highlighted, that square footage in yellow here. That's not unused. I mean, it's completely unused, and right now it's blocked off. We'll talk more about how that figures into what I want to talk about today later. The Harbor Hank property is also 15,000 square feet, but that includes a 6,000 square foot parking lot, which we'll see on on the middle one in a little bit. That building footprint total, the building that's on that property is 9,000 square feet, just on the footprint. It was newly constructed and occupied in 1983. In fact, it's the most recent all-new building built downtown to serve as a retail brick and mortar business with its related foot traffic. It has a 9,000 square feet of space on each floor, so that makes up 18,000 square feet in total. It has no basement. It has a street level floor. That street level floor, when the retail fixtures are removed, the only obstructions remaining would be load-bearing cinder block walls around 2 stairwells, 1 elevator, and a 3-stall garage. The Harbor Hank building has a second floor. 2/3 of that was utilized for backstop when it was operated as a hardware store. Its ceilings and walls are unfinished, except for skylight encasements. The remaining 1/3 of the second floor actually just has drywall walls that encase a number of different rooms. A couple of them are living room size. There actually are 4 full bathrooms there. There's about 6 bedroom sized rooms, probably a little small for your average conference room. There are load-bearing cinder block walls that do encase the elevator and the 2 stairwells on the second floor as well. Just to speak a little quickly on what the roof of the building looks like, it was constructed such that it's higher in elevation on the sides and lower in elevation in the center, so it allows for a little bit better drainage than what you'd have for a lot of buildings that have more flat roofs, and that was very consciously done at the time. It should be noted that demolition to retrofit Harbor Hank for the City Hall occupancy could be quite minimum, as much of the building is not finished space and complete gutting is not required. I'll also say that, again, with the retail fixtures removed on ground level floor, one idea that comes to mind is that could City Hall short-term operate in first floor, and could the remodeling take place on the second floor while City Hall exists temporarily in first floor, and then ultimately the whole building get remodeled at some point. Let's look at the bottom of this slide. Here what you'll see that something has been added at the center, right there. It's clip art meant to represent a new City Hall appropriate grand entrance. It straddles the center point of the south elevation of the two buildings combined, allowing access to each from the other. The grand entrance that's imagined on the slide is about a 2,000 square foot, based on what we've got in yellow highlighting there again. It's a 35-foot half circle radius, and so that makes up that 2,000 square feet. You'll also notice that the graphic at the bottom of the first slide shows revisions to the Harbor Hank building. And those revisions especially include windows are changed or added on second floor. They modernize the building's look. They add daylight to the upstairs interior. Again, the window changes and additions are easily possible given that the precast concrete wall sections of that building allow easy cutting with industrial saws. My additional note on the windows in the Harbor Hank building is a suggestion to maximize windows on the second floor and for security, minimize them on the first floor, as is currently the case. In total, this plan provides 22,300 square feet for City Hall use. I'll qualify that by saying that the grand entrance, 2,000 square feet, maybe isn't functional. It's more attractive as part of the whole project. So really, we're looking at more like 20,000 square feet in total, and I've heard the number of desired square feet today kind of vary between 18,000 to 20,000, somewhere in there, so it seems like a good fit to me. Slide 2 is a floor plan of the auditorium, Harbor Hank, and that new entrance that we just talked about. Let's look at the fuchsia triangles up here that maybe are a little hard for you to see, but the first fuchsia triangle highlights that stage floor. 2,300 square feet like we talked about. What's visualized here are 4-foot desks here, actually 20 of them. So it gives you an idea that there's a good amount of space that's actually there. What's also interesting is that there is wing space on the side of those stages. So for a normal amount of visitors, you could probably fit everybody onto the stage. But a really great feature of the auditorium is this portion of the auditorium. The auditorium is actually kind of like thirds. The big middle third is where you have a basketball court, but then you have two, what's the terminology I want to look for? Balconies, 2 balconies that are up there, and they have permanent seating, and that permanent seating could overlook the stage. I've heard some talk today about wanting some additional community engagement, and I think providing seating that wouldn't be quite so on top of the council could be helpful in people being able to feel like they can passively participate as opposed to have to being really crowded into a room, if that makes sense. So let's talk about the blue triangle, which is, again, focusing on that grand entrance add-on. What we look at there is, I've kind of coined the phrase that it's impressive but not excessive. I know the council is concerned about expenses, and so we wouldn't want to do something that would be really expensive and not also take into account what it needs to do as part of the building combination. So what I've indicated here is that it provides a focal point in the middle of the two buildings' south elevations. About 2,000 square feet, as we've talked about. It enables indoor access between the two buildings. Could be locked down separately from either existing building. And there's a 1/3 of a block of parking immediately accessible. One question I've heard along the way is what could happen in this kind of scenario with the entrances that are already existing in these buildings? And of course, the auditorium has a main entrance along here. That would have to be maintained as an emergency exit, certainly. And Harbor Hank has 2 exits also that are adjacent to stairwells that also would need to be maintained as part of the plan. Finally, let's look at slide 3. Here what we have is 2 versions of a map and scale of the entire block of the proposed solution for City Hall. The left half, it shows the block as it currently exists. And this contains both the auditorium and the Harbor Hank buildings. And anything else on here, the non-parking parcels other than the auditorium and Harbor Hank are in black. So there's a lot of black in this version. Parking owned by the city or Harbor Hank is in darker gray. A little bit hard to see on this particular graphic. But the lightest gray is actually sidewalk, which currently is only the perimeter of the block. On the right half, this imagines that the current City Hall is demolished. So that becomes parking. The new entrance, of course, is added. Green space and sidewalks are added equivalent to the square footage of the demolished current City Hall. The result is no net loss of city-owned off-street parking space. So just kind of making it more engaging and pulling people in with some additional green space. So that's my 5 minutes.
Thank you.
You bet.
And I have to apologize to Megan because I forgot to have our speakers, if you would please state your name and whether you live in the city or not.
I'm Dirk Muehlers, and I do not live in the city.
Jim Bach, I do live in the city.
Andrew Lindquist, I do not live in the city limits.
Can we have time for questions for Dirk or not? Or will the time allow that?
If people have questions and you have time, that would be fine. We've got
Dirk, on your far right drawing that you have up there, one of the conversations that happened at the last meeting of our group was that to add the additional green space in the footprint of the current City Hall. Would you envision that being a possibility there? And then what I had mentioned earlier today was the deal about the playground equipment. Would that fit into what you're thinking of, or would that detract from what you're trying to do with the entrance and actually turn into a negative rather than a positive, in your opinion?
Well, that was in my notes from today as well, that more of the term park as opposed to green space is what I got from today. I think the problem is that if you do want to make this more of a park, you would eat into the parking. So that's a consideration one way or the other.
any other questions?
Just ADA compliance, would you, I'm assuming that there's an elevator right inside of that entrance point? Yeah.
It's the elevator right there, yes. So it would not add ADA to the auditorium, nor would this plan need to. What could happen is that you'd build a ramp to this stage, or there's those small onesie elevators that could be brought up. So it's basically a half story to the stage itself. So that's would be accommodated in the 2,000 square feet.
The difference in elevation for the council's memory is 9 inches between the auditorium and the Hardware Hank building.
Okay.
I believe it was 9 inches, right?
Yeah.
9 inches between
Not
the
very
two
much.
buildings. Yeah. So you very easily could do what Dirk just said if ramped that.
Any other questions?
Thank you for showing up.
What's the price tag of the Hardware Hank building?
400,000.
Excuse me?
400,000. Thanks again.
And
Yeah, thank you.
property taxes are $9,000 a year. So, and $125,000 was the estimate to move a T1 line. Okay, if nothing else, meeting's adjourned.
Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you all.
Thank you.